Hello, Biblionauts, and this is the end. Nice song from the Doors, by the way. This is the end. We are done. Finito, finito, acabado, final. We are gone. I'm going. I'm leaving you with the book. Bye. No, okay. I'll just say a few words. We have finished. I am glad I finished this last chapter. Is a bit tedious because I just don't agree with sort of like the final conclusion. That's the problem with philosophy, is always trying to do like overarching arguments that trying to like cover it all and get you with a final inescapable conclusion that gives you the meaning of something, right? And that's not like, it's not like that. This is a serious thing. Adorno is claiming that the Enlightenment produced the horrors of the 20th century, anti-Semitism, and it should be addressed more in depth than I'm gonna do here. However, this is my real long, and I am warned off. I need to go. I have the backpack there, and still same day as the previous video that you got last week, and I have things to do. So, all I'm gonna say about this is just a couple of things. First thing, the Enlightenment did not cause Auschwitz. The Enlightenment did not cause any of the horrors of the 20th century. However, the question is legitimate. How is it possible that after the project of the Enlightenment, after the incredible optimism and the ideas of progress from Enlightenment figures such as Kant or Diderot, Voltaire, how is it possible that after that moment in which everything seemed like finally reason is going to save us, it's going to bring progress, that somehow we entered into a moment of regress that brought back brutalism, that brought back barbarity, and so on and so forth? There is a historical answer to that, and probably I am very, very tempted to read the Rise and Fall of the... Is the Rise and Fall or the... Yeah, I think it's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's a book recommended by Steve Donaghy, and Geoff Spiney also was doing, I think, a read-along, or at least a read of it in several parts. And maybe this would be a good moment for me to read that book. Or maybe Primo Levi's If I Am a Man Again. Either, in any case, there are multiple explanations to what happened on the 20th century. There are many ways, many lenses, many frameworks to arrive at the conclusion this is the reason why it happened. There's the more obvious one, which is that Hitler was born. But I don't think that everything can be reduced to a single individual. And even if it were, what philosophy allows us to do is to look at the narratives, the frameworks, the thought processes, and the methodologies for thinking, the ways in which reason is articulated, that allow someone to get into those conclusions, or that even encourage it. So, is there anything in the previous video, which I really encourage you to check out, because it's the meat of this book is in the culture industry video, which I will link in the description. I kind of lost the train of thought. Was there anything of the dynamics of the fascism patent in society before, that somehow was like the perfect soil for the perfect fertile soil for fascism, for anti-Semitism, for any kind of social hostility and various dynamics? I believe there was. I don't agree with the idea that, later on, there was... not later on, actually, before. Adorno was influenced by Walter Benjamin. Walter Benjamin believed that history failed, just straight. He was very pessimist. He was exiled. His life was largely sad, and his death was the saddest of all. He was trying to cross the border, escaping from the Gestapo. He arrived, the border was already closed, and And he thought, okay, if the border is closed, that means I'm gonna get caught, so I might as well kill myself. And he just overdosed himself with morphine. He didn't do it properly and spent a horrible night. Finally died the next morning, and that same morning the border opened again. So yeah, I mean, there's I don't share the pessimism of Adorno or Walter Benjamin to the same degree. I don't think that even today it is decided that history has failed, and I also don't agree with the claim. And I'm gonna leave that for the end of the video, but yeah, I don't agree that history has failed. And it's not decided. I mean, around that, there's many ways in which the world is not really going in the direction that it should be going if we really lived in a world with progress, especially in quantifiable terms. But I don't think that that means necessarily that it is decided that or that history has failed or anything like that. Everything is subject to change all the time. And by sort of like laying back in conformism, we are pretty much falling into the attitudes that guarantee that failure. So I am not gonna encourage that. But again, going back to the question, was there anything before the horrors of the 20th century that encouraged that was a good fertile soil for them to come out? And yes, I believe there was. I think that the culture industry chapter outlines them quite well. The industrial revolutions, the expansion of the mass production, the human relationships as sort of like commodities, the fact that sort of like because it expands in every single direction, all of this, if you want an explanation, is again the last time I'll say it on the previous video. I'm not explaining anything, I'm concluding. These are concluding thoughts. All of those dynamics that we saw on the previous chapter are necessary, pretty much necessary, and encourage fragmentation of societies, thrive mentality, and of course hostility towards anyone who is not in your particular circle. Of course, there is also a critique of a wider critique of capitalism in the previous chapter that not necessarily like capitalism doesn't equal these things necessarily, or perhaps it does because it's based on capital, and in the moment that capital is the center of what you are trying to obtain from everything and everyone, when it's the face value, the main value of everything, necessarily it becomes the new god. Any ism is wrong, right? It's at least not good. And capitalism is the ism of capital. Capital not necessarily as money. Many liberals will say that, trying to explain that, you know, everything is capital, your work is capital, everything is capital. But the thing is that if everything is capital, everything is commodity. If everything is commodity, everything is going to be extracted, which means that we are constantly trapped within this scheme of reason, instrumental reason, the reason that allows us to control nature, as we saw in the first chapter of this book, the reason that allows us to, through that methodology, get things from the world and from others. That instrumental reason was certainly helpful in terms of fragmenting a society, because if you see everyone else as someone to take something from, true human connection is lost. Through hospitality, through fraternity, all of those things suddenly become consumer relations, nothing else. In that sense, yes, to the question, yes. Now, from that, Adorno sort of like wants to claim that reason was at the service of power. That reason is, because it is controlled by power, is the ultimate reason, is the ultimate reason, as redundant as it might sound, why Auschwitz happened, and I don't agree with that. Auschwitz was ultimately irrational. I understand where it is coming from, in the sense of like that schematization, that clinical way of treating human relations is normally identified with reason, but not reason in terms of logic, but reason in terms of that sort of like cold mathematical way of looking at societies. A reason in the way in which like the American army was structured, and the troops went into Iraq, right? There's a movie from Meryl Streep, I don't remember the name of the movie, but where someone says people is being tortured in Iraq, and something from the intelligence department, which is very convenient for this argument, says the United States of America does not torture people; they only extract information. Again, that is an interesting example for what we are talking about here. So, yes, there were dynamics. I don't believe, again, let me just say that again. I don't believe that reason is a problem. I don't believe that the Enlightenment was the problem. But I do agree that there were certain things that were in before the 20th century that influenced that. And this is the ones that I just spoke about. However, reason is precisely what saves us from that. Ultimately, the Enlightenment was, the Second World War, any war, is always irrational, even if it's structured rationally. The ultimate conclusion is irrational. If you were to take reason to its ultimate extent, you would not fight. You would not fall into any kind of nationalism, any kind of hostility towards others in that sense. So reason is just a tool, like any other. If it's used properly, if it's used in the sense of like using logical reasoning in order to arrive to plausible conclusions, you will never fall there. And as contradictory with Adorno's thesis as that might sound, I think it's also a conclusion that you can extract from this book if you give it the right reading, which is that it is not events but ways of thinking that allows us to fall into those flaws that can create horrors, that can historically tremendous catastrophes happen for. And because of that, like, we should always keep ourselves in check when it comes to what kind of thoughts, how are we, like, in what way are we thinking about others? In what way are we behaving towards others, and in what way are we fitting in our society? In what way is our society influencing us? Are we ourselves, or have we become a piece of some greater whole that is controlling us from the outside? I think those are all questions that that can be found in this book, and that are incredibly helpful for you to find a place in the world that is not toxic and that allows something like Auschwitz, but also something like the superficial market relations that govern our lives nowadays to not happen. And I think it's a constant work of use of reason. So ultimately, I don't think that this book makes you arrive at the conclusion that irrationality is the answer or anything like that, or sort of like true mysticism is the answer. I think that after all, reason itself is the answer, and selective reason is a form of irrationality. Being like organizing your troops in a way that is guided by instrumental reason, but then following a completely irrational goal is irrationality. So I don't know if that answers any of your questions. I'm sorry I'm not giving a more in-depth reading of this chapter, but I also don't. It's much more like grounded in historical facts. It's much more. It's much less abstract. So I'm sure that you've been able to understand what he's saying, despite his dry prose, which is not as dry as other philosophers, by the way. But yeah, I think that is pretty much everything I had to say about the chapter. Once again, I refer you to my previous video, and let me know what you thought. Let me know if you would like me to do more videos on philosophy. I am considering to make this a habit. Maybe not full books, but specific passages, like the chapter, like the chapter that I most like in this book, which is the culture industry, and analyze those chapters in depth, maybe once a month or something like that. And yeah, that is pretty much everything. I'll see you on the other side. Thank you, Booktube.